What's up, guys? Thanks for pulling up to Psosi Studio. I'm Psosi, the People's Designer, and today I'm going to be talking about my graphic design journey, highlighting my successes and mistakes thus far, offering my experience as a sort of case study for anyone that's interested in pursuing a career in graphic design, or for anyone that's trying to see what it looks like in general to follow a passion that aligns with your skill set. After earning a BFA in graphic design last year, and a minor in arts leadership with a concentration in entrepreneurship, I continued my freelance career and launched into an exciting new venture, which was the co-founding of HomeCrowd Threads, which is a brand that partners with primarily athletes to create merchandise that elevates their personal brand. And now that you know where I'm currently at, let's backtrack to where this all began. I was born in Accra, Ghana, West Africa, and I moved to the United States at the age of 5. So I don't really have much recollection of any sort of creative influence or experience back home in Ghana. So yeah, I moved to the US during kindergarten, and my first notable experience in my creative journey was in first grade, when I created a drawing of a basketball figure that was displayed at a gallery exhibition at like a local ice cream shop. At that age, I don't really think I understand, like the whole concept of like a gallery and all that, but I'm pretty sure that having that experience of having my artwork displayed at the gallery, having people, congratulate me, and, having my parents there, my art teacher and all that, I'm pretty sure that, I at least got a sense of encouragement from that whole experience. So that brings me to lesson 1 of my creative journey, which is encouragement catalyzes interest. And so because, my art teacher was encouraging me with all my drawings and stuff at that time, and my parents were also, telling me, what a good job I did of having my artwork displayed in that ice cream shop and everything, I felt, encouraged to pursue drawing further and, kind of dive deeper into the world of art. And actually, I'd also like to provide some context from my upbringing that kind of explains and lays the foundation of my creative journey. The school district that I was a part of really encouraged and emphasized the arts as being something very integral and important to the development of, us as children and to our education as a whole. And then on top of seeing that need and necessity for incorporating the arts as part of our education, the school had the resources to act on in order to give us as students a well-rounded education in the arts. So I think that's important to note because, in certain instances, in certain school districts, kids don't have access to, necessarily like the right materials to elevate their artistic experience and interest. And so I was fortunate that I, did go to a school and was a part of a school district that did have those things, which allowed me to blossom in my creativity. But to continue, the next significant period in my art journey came at the tail end of 3rd grade going into the 4th grade. And so at this time, I already had like an interest in drawing and everything. And then along with that, I also began to become very obsessed with football and the NFL. Like my dream was to actually become like a professional football player in the NFL. And I actually want to go on like a quick tangent about how I even got into football, because it's definitely really important to my art journey as a whole, being that a lot of my artwork has revolved around football being the subject matter. So like I mentioned earlier, I moved to the US at the age of 5. And so when I was coming to the US, I was not familiar with American football. Soccer was my favorite sport at the time. And I guess I might have liked basketball a little bit, being that, my first gallery piece was a drawing of a basketball player. But yeah, when I first moved to the US, I actually was living with my extended family. And so my uncle, who I was staying with, had already been living in the US for quite some time. And he was a, pretty big football fan. And, being outside of Philly, he was an Eagles fan. And so, yeah, I remember though, like when I would first kind of like, be around in like the living room and he'd be watching games, I'd be like what is this game that he's watching? Like, I don't understand it. Like, these guys are just running around in like these helmets, shoulder pads. Like, I was completely disinterested. Like, I honestly didn't like football at all during that time. But then there was one beautiful Sunday afternoon after church. My family and we went to Famous Dave's Barbecue in Philly. And the reason I remember like this moment so distinctly is because I realized that like right after this day was when I became like insanely like obsessed with football. So yeah, basically I just remember, we were sitting in the restaurant waiting, I think we had ordered our food and we were waiting, for the food to get back to us and everything. And I remember like, obviously at all restaurants they have, the TV screens. And I remember, seeing the Minnesota Vikings and the Cincinnati Bengals playing a game. And what was the date? It was December 13th, 2009. At the time, I didn't know who the teams were because I had no familiarity with the game of football. But I just remember like looking at the Bengals uniforms and I was like, wow, those are like really cool looking. Like, we have like the Tiger team versus like this other purple team. And so I think it's funny that it's actually like the uniform design that initially got me into the game of football, because honestly, like maybe if it was some other, like, I don't know, maybe if it was like the Browns or something versus like a different team that had like some ugly jerseys, I wouldn't be, have been so much drawn into the game. And yeah, I just remember thinking like, oh wow, this is interesting, this is cool. And then from that moment on, I was completely hooked. But yeah, back to my, creative journey, it was clear that my interest in drawing and football were peaking at the same time. And so the result of that was I literally didn't like draw any other subject matter outside of football from like 4th grade through 8th grade. And I think another factor that played into me being so obsessed with like drawing and creating NFL players is that my parents at the time did not allow me to play youth football. So I think because I wasn't actually able to play the game of football, another way for me to kind of live out my fantasy of, being involved with football was to be able to use my creative abilities to create all these NFL players. So when I first started doing these drawings, my method was to go to fathead.com, find a cool pose of a player, and then find a blank piece of paper, draw that player on the paper, and then cut it out and then paste it on my wall. So here you can see I have a bunch of little players posted up. There are currently 105 different player drawings on my wall, and the grand total of drawings that I ended up making was 330. And so the rest of them exist in this football binder. There's a ton of little sketches in here, and the thing is, like, if you want a general sense of like how obsessed I was with drawing these players, like all the drawings in this binder aren't even on like plain sheets of paper. They're all on like scrap pieces of paper that I was getting from like my classmates in class. If any of them had spare paper, I was like, yo, just let me have it, because I do all these little drawings on them. So on like the back of these pieces of paper are like homework assignments. Like, and also another really cool thing that happened with my little football drawings is that there was one time where I actually sent a drawing that I made of JJ Watt sacking Peyton Manning, and I mailed it to the Houston Texans facility. And about a year later, after I mailed it to him, I ended up getting a signed, I don't know if you can see the signature there, but yeah, I ended up getting a signed photo from JJ Watt's foundation, which was, that was super cool as like, a kid in middle school to receive a signed autograph from one of the best defensive players to ever, play the game. That was definitely one of the coolest things to come out of me doing all the, little NFL player drawings. So when you see all my NFL illustrations now on social media, you can kind of see where I started from. Hundreds and hundreds of iterations of these drawings just to, keep, working on my craft and becoming as excellent of an artist as I could be. And like I said, from this whole 5-year period that I was very invested in drawing, I really didn't draw anything outside of football or NFL players. So even early on, I was already kind of choosing the niche, my creative niche that I was going to create in. But it wasn't really until high school that I began to kind of expand my creative interests and create things outside of the world of sports, and specifically football. At the end of 8th grade was when I got my first phone, and it was like this tiny little Windows phone, and man, it was something else, because like for whatever reason it couldn't get any of like the normal apps that everyone else had. Not even just like iPhone had, like Android, like it couldn't even get the same apps that an Android could have. Like I had to use Instagram beta, I couldn't even use Snapchat. I was using my family's tablet to use Snapchat. That's how goofy this little phone was. But anyways, I bring that up because, having a phone meant that it was kind of my first introduction into social media. And obviously with social media comes exposure to so many things that are outside of like what you are originally familiar with. And so because at that time I wasn't seeing like people around me doing graphic design, I had no idea that graphic design was even a thing. I thought, obviously I had an idea of what digital art was, but, I was obviously familiar with traditional analog art, drawing pencil to paper. So I was completely unfamiliar with this whole world of, creating through a computer, through a screen. And so when I got on Instagram, I was seeing these super cool looking artworks of NFL players, but they were made, through digital means. And I thought, wow, like I really want to be able to like make this type of stuff on my own. Here's me trying to recreate these type of these edits or designs using this program called BeFunky. It was a nice little introduction to graphic design, although very limited, and there's so much more that obviously that you can do with design outside of making these edits. But there was actually one artist in particular on Instagram that really, I think, is what catalyzed my interest in design, and that is Back Graphics, or BAC Graphics, because not only were they doing that trending design style, but they also had like a very cool illustration style that I really liked. And if you look at my work, you'll definitely see that it references Back Graphics illustration style. So that brings me to lesson 3, which is identify inspiration, remix it, and make it your own. So I think I mentioned this in my intro video, actually, how artists, we kind of like to think that we're creating everything from scratch, completely original, but obviously literally any artwork that's out there references something in the past, whether it be referencing some other artist or a cultural facet. But yeah, beyond that initial inspiration, what really kickstarted my journey into graphic design specifically was that at the end of 8th grade, my art teacher, Mr. Hosback, who I mentioned earlier in this video, he took our 8th grade class to the high school, which actually was right across the bridge from the middle school. That's how our schools were set up. The middle school was right across from the high school. But he took us over to the graphic design classroom. And then I remember being there that day, walking around the classroom. There was like an active class happening. So I remember seeing all the, big high schools on their big Mac computers working on stuff. And then kind of like looking around the classroom, seeing like, all the cool work that was up on the walls. And I was like, you know what, I can really see myself doing this thing. And, the purpose of that trip was to just kind of pique our interests, to potentially take graphic design as an elective in high school. But yeah, right, as soon as I left, the little graphic design room tour that day, I knew that for sure I was gonna make sure to sign up for the elective slot during, my freshman year of high school, and just kind of see what it was like. And then if I was interested, I would pursue further classes. And that actually brings me back to the whole thing about access and resources. It's not every high school that has a graphic design like studio available for students to use, which is something I actually learned early on in my collegiate career when we first started our graphic design classes. I actually was kind of surprised that there was a bunch of students in my class that weren't actually super familiar with the Adobe program. And then I realized like, oh shoot, like it's not normal or like the standard for high schools to have a graphic design class or classes for them to take, as part of their school. Yeah, I'm very, fortunate and thankful that my high school did have those design classes and that I was able to take it early on and really, learn and get familiar with the Adobe suite and all that. And I actually want to show you guys some of my first graphic design works from that freshman year class. With the one and only Miss Taylor. Obviously, I've improved a little bit since then, but one of the most instrumental pieces to me improving, from those initial stages in my freshman year of graphic design was my teacher, Miss Taylor. And I really cannot tell my graphic design story without mentioning her. She was easily one of the most instrumental factors to me really gaining an interest in design and pursuing it further as a career. I ended up taking 3 classes with her. So graphic design 1 freshman year, graphic design 2 sophomore year, tongue twister. Graphic design 3, junior year. And each year we got closer and closer as I spent more time in the studio after class. I was in orchestra and chorus during high school, so I had rehearsals. I think like at least for orchestra it was twice a week, and for chorus I'm pretty sure it was also like 2 or 3 times a week, but a lot of times I skipped it though to go to the studio though, obviously, so for good reasons. But yeah, anytime that I could, I would find time to go after class, after school, to go to the design studio and work on my own projects. But yeah, because I was one of the few students that continually showed up, after hours or even during class, just really showed that I was very interested. She took notice of me, and because of that, I think because she saw how interested I was in design, she, started really kind of pouring into me more and trying to really help me grow, as an artist and being able to put myself out there. Which brings me to lesson 4, which is take initiative and show up. Because, I took the initiative to even skip out on chorus every now and then, to go and work on stuff in the studio. And, by showing up consistently, Miss Taylor took notice, like I said, and because of that, she was able to kind of start throwing opportunities my way that really helped me grow as a designer. One of the first and probably most important opportunities that she gave me came my junior year. This pivotal moment is basically what confirmed for me that I wanted to pursue a career in graphic design. So yeah, let me set the scene. Junior year, we had a project assigned to us, which was to create a watercolor style portrait on Adobe Illustrator. And so basically, if you're familiar with watercolor, it's kind of like more of an opaque, type of painting style where you mix paint, the actual paint material with water, and then, you layer it on a canvas. But, kind of the way to achieve this sort of style digitally is to, draw shapes on top of each other at a low opacity so that, as you layer them on top of each other, it creates different intensities of saturation and vibrance. So for my portrait, I chose a photo of me making this face. And I chose to make that face as an expression of self-confidence because at the time I actually was really struggling with that, because someone at the time from my school had made a comment to me about me having like big lips. And, to be honest, that's not something I would really let bother me. But for whatever reason at the time, I let it get to my head. And so I started feeling like very self-conscious about it. And that brings me to lesson number 5, which is be careful where you place your self-value. Don't ever let your self-value be found in other people, because they will always be able to either build you up or tear you down. And as a result, that can leave you kind of shifting and changing your identity and not feeling like very rooted in who you are. Personally, I find my value and identity in God. And so there's a verse I actually want to read that kind of is what I used as a reminder to not let that whole, lips comment bother me and build back up my sense of, self-worth and confidence. And that is Psalm 139:14, which says, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And so, I remember kind of like reflecting and thinking on that and really internalizing it. And, after internalizing it, I'm like, what is this guy talking about, bro? Like, and so that's why I chose to make that face as kind of like a way to combat that whole kind of feeling. But yeah, here is the portrait in question. And so the portrait really was actually just made for the purpose of the class, because it was, like I said, it was like an assigned project to do the watercolor portrait. But then it just so happened that after we had completed the project for class, there was a congressional art competition happening. And so, like I said, because, me and Miss Taylor, we were buddies, and she was like, Perry, like, you did a really good job on this watercolor portrait. I think you should submit it to this congressional art competition. And I was like, I guess why not? We'll see what happens. And then, so yeah, I ended up submitting it, and I was awarded a certificate in the graphic design category and was a finalist for Best in Show at the Congressional Art Show. So yeah, that was a pretty, cool experience to have, and something that really gave me a lot of confidence. And yeah, I remember I got to take a picture with like the I guess like the Congress, was it the senator or something like that, or representative from my district, Pat Meehan, although I think he did end up getting in a little bit of trouble soon after we took this photo. But yeah, that was just a really exciting time for me, getting to win that award. And then also another thing is like at school, on the announcements at the end of every day, I swear for like, I don't know, it felt like it might have only been like a week, 2 weeks, but it literally felt for like it was like a month. They would just be like, congratulations to Junior Perry Psosi on winning this award. And so like every day in my last period, I'd just be there like, as I'm hearing my name on the announcements. I don't know if Miss Taylor put in a word to have me get some extra airtime. But yeah, literally, it was like every day I was just hearing my name on the announcements, which was like, obviously it was really cool to get that acknowledgement. That really did, I guess, kind of build my credibility as an artist. And at least like around school and stuff, people began to know that like, oh, this guy Perry, he does like graphic design stuff, which I think was just good for laying the foundation for starting to kind of build my brand. I think by that time I was already kind of going by Psosi. I don't really remember who was like the first person to really call me Psosi. Whoever it was, like, shout out to you. But yeah, I think by that time I already was going by Psosi because like I had my art Instagram and everything. But actually, no, that's not true. I just realized when I first had my art Instagram, it used to be Psosi.art. It used to be just like, yeah, just Psosi.art, not Psosi. So I gotta think back to when I actually changed it to Psosi. But yeah, anyways, to get kind of back on topic, really the reason why I wanted to point out this whole experience of winning, of this, creating this portrait and winning the award, is that it really gave me obviously the confidence, but it was also really important in terms of me starting my freelance graphic design career. And so yeah, at the time on Instagram, I really didn't have a following. I probably had like 200 followers or something like that. But like I said, because the portrait that I made was at a gallery like showcase, it was there for like I think a couple weeks or maybe like a month or something like that. And so there was a woman that had gone to like see the show, because I think if I remember correctly, the gallery was at like one of the local community colleges, so it was like pretty easy access to anyone and everyone. And so there was a woman that had gone to see the gallery showcase and really liked my portrait and everything. And then so I guess she ended up finding my Instagram, my art Instagram, and then she messaged me. It was like, hey, I saw your artwork at the gallery. I thought it looked really cool, and I would love for you to make a commission piece for me in that kind of like same style. And I was like, oh shoot, yeah, for sure, I got you. And so I feel like that was really like the first time someone, like a stranger, had reached out to me to for commission work, like for graphic design commission work at least. Like I'd done like drawings, like physical drawings commissions before, but this was like my first like graphic design commission, and I guess my entryway into the world of freelance. So yeah, I took on that that opportunity, and I ended up making the portrait for her. And so after making that first poster as part of my freelance design career, I started kind of getting more opportunities come my way. And so kind of the first genre of commissions I was doing was actually in the world of cover art for music artists. And so word of mouth was kind of really what got me these first initial opportunities. There was this local SoundCloud rapper whose name I'm not going to mention because I have a bit of a complex relationship with him. But yeah, he was on the lookout for a cover artist, cover art artist. And so someone from my school like had him on Snapchat or something like that, and he had basically swiped up on this rapper's story and was like, yeah, I know somebody, that makes cool, kind of designs and stuff. You should check him out if you're looking for, a designer for your cover art. And so I guess he checked out my page, like what he saw, and then he messaged me. He's like, yo, bro, would love to work with you on getting some cover art done. And I was like, yeah, I'm totally down to work with you. make this cover art. So yeah, he sent me over the first project, and so I, he even sent me the song as well to listen to kind of get more of a feel of what the cover art should look, or like the vibe of the song and what the cover art should look like. And so after listening to the song, hearing the title and all that, I came up with the cover, and he was like, yo, like this is fire, all that. And I was like, bet, like he loves the cover, everything's going great. So then I was like, yeah, would you be able to send me $25 for it? And first of all, $25 is like for any art, like even if you're like making some like artwork that's not even good, 25 is way cheap for cover art. And especially for like the quality of what I was doing and the time I spent doing it, 25 was way cheap. But that was like my first time really doing it, and I didn't know the market. But you want to know what he told me? He was like, oh, actually I like don't pay for cover art. And I was like, oh. So immediately that should have been a red flag, right? Like he was like, I don't pay for cover art. But being that this was like my first opportunity and I was kind of new to it all, I was like, oh, I guess these guys don't pay for cover art. And then it's not like he was like a big time artist, but he was like big enough where I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. The trade-off is, I get exposure by him like tagging me and stuff. And, in exchange for doing, this cover art that I'm, pouring all of my creative energy and, a time into and all that. But yeah, I mean, that brings me actually to lesson 6, which is do your research and be educated. Because imagine if I had just like taken a second to be like, like designers don't get paid for doing cover art, then what's like the whole point? Like if people are making a career out of this. So what I should have done is I should have done my research and be like, yeah, like this is not normal. Like, sure, I spent my time making that one cover art. I really should have just like never sent it to him and been like, yeah, I'm not gonna give it to you unless you pay. And I'm sure he would have paid, but because I was a youngin at the time, I was kind of let myself, I guess, get pushed around in that regard for this, but for this artist in particular. But yeah, I think this honestly, that really was detrimental to my ability to earn income as an artist, because it made me set the bar so low for myself where I was like, I didn't really value my own artwork as being worth a monetary value. Like I was like, I guess if artists really don't pay that much for it, like there's no way I can be charging like $50 to $100 for this cover art, because artists don't really like rappers don't really pay for this artwork. So I think that really set me back in terms of like my pricing and stuff, and really figuring out like how to gauge the market and charge what is a fair price for the the work and quality and all that I'm putting into it. But yeah, anyways, like I said, I ended up kind of like going with it, kind of using the whole thing of working for free in exchange for that exposure. And so I ended up making like a few cover arts for this guy. And so I guess the positive was that I did end up getting more exposure. Like there were other rappers that ended up reaching out to me and asking me to do work for them. And so I ended up doing quite a bit of cover art for a bunch of guys in like mainly the Philly area. I don't think there was anyone too far outside of that. I think there was maybe one guy I think was from Atlanta that I ended up doing work for. It was quite the experience getting kind of my initial journey into freelance, and kind of having to learn on the fly about things like pricing, client relationships, and all that. But I will say though, one kind of like cool story I have about the whole cover art phase was that there is a rapper who I can mention his name. I didn't actually end up getting to work with him, but a rapper that goes by Too Rare. He's a well-known Philly rapper. He has like 660K followers now, but at the time when I was in like my junior year of high school, doing in my little cover art phase, he had actually reached out to me to get some cover art made. But he did it on like such a short notice, and then I think I'd responded and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'll be able to get it done by like whatever time period he needed. I think it was probably like, honestly, it was probably like the next day or like in a couple hours. I was like, yeah, I don't think I'll be able to get it done. But yeah, he never ended up like responding once I'd asked a question basically like, do you want it to like look like this or something, and then he never responded. But yeah, I didn't end up following up because I was like, all right, like I don't have time to be bothered with this. I got other stuff. So hey, I mean, never got to work with him or anything, but who's to say that I don't get to potentially work with him in the future. And also he is part Ghanaian, so shout out to bro. Yeah, hopefully I haven't done too much like cover art for music artists as of late. I have done a little bit, but hopefully that is something I get to do more of, because I did really enjoy that process of, figuring out how to create a visual that related to, the audio, auditory sound of the, whether it be like a single or an album, and, creating something that really reflects that and is also very, aesthetically pleasing and attractive to the audience. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the the cover art phase as in relation to music artists. And one thing I will say as well is that, that whole time of me working with all these rappers definitely did help me build my social media following a little bit. It's not like it was anything crazy. I still was definitely under like 500 followers at that time, probably like, calm like 440 or something like that. But yeah, that was, at least I was able to just keep growing my confidence as an artist. Like, confidence is just so important as an artist, but really obviously in any other kind of like, field of work that you're in, just being confident in yourself and what you're doing and your abilities and all that. But yeah, back to the graphic design journey. Obviously, junior year is the time where you really kind of have to lock in and start thinking about the future and everything in terms of, are you going to go pursue a bachelor's or go to trade school, or maybe, go straight into the workforce or join the army, whatever. That's when you kind of start figuring that stuff out. And then so my junior year, I already figured by then, that I was going to, go the route of going to college and everything. And like I said, because, being influenced by, Miss Taylor and feeling so encouraged, and then obviously winning the graphic design award, at that time I knew like, oh yeah, for sure, like I want to pursue graphic design in college. And so when I was doing my search for, colleges that I wanted to potentially attend, I really narrowed down my search to schools that have a really great graphic design program and that were also part of a larger university. So I kind of knew right from the jump I didn't want to go to like a strictly art school, although I was kind of initially considering it. But I mean, if you go to just a purely art school, there's only going to be really a certain type of student that you're surrounded by. Everyone's going to be an artist. Basically, it's like I just felt like it would be better to be in a more diverse environment where I have, access to a network of, a broad range of interests and, things like that. Because I think that just, really enriches your experience. And also in case I wanted to kind of like branch out of just doing like, something relating to the arts specifically, going to an art school within a part of a large university would allow that. It would be much easier to take, classes in other categories. And I applied to Tyler School of Art. That was one of the first schools I was considering. Tyler School of Art, which is part of Temple University in Philly, which is not too far from where I live. And part of the reason why I knew that Tyler was one of the places I wanted to go to right off the bat is because I went to a 2-week summer course at Tyler School of Art for graphic design. So again, shout out to Miss Taylor, because she's the one that put me onto that program. She had even like helped me get like a scholarship for it, I think. So I mean, again, like shout out to Miss Taylor, because she was really looking out for me, had my best interests at heart and really wanted to see me grow as a designer. But yeah, I had such a great experience at that 2-week program. It was kind of like my first taste of what the college experience would be like. I took the train from near my house into Philly every morning, and then afternoon coming back home. And yeah, it was cool to meet other artists my age kind of doing the same thing and getting to bond with them over those couple of weeks. And yeah, I mean, that was a really great experience at Tyler School of Art. And then I also applied to Syracuse University, University of Delaware, Drexel University, Virginia Commonwealth University, Carnegie Mellon, Northeastern, and Boston University. Carnegie Mellon was the only school that ended up rejecting me. But yeah, all the others accepted me. All the other schools accepted me. All glory to God. And when it came down to it, money was obviously going to be a huge factor in my decision. I was not trying to go to school and then have tons of debt, to pay after graduating. So that left BU, Temple, and Syracuse University. Those were the schools I think that offered me the most like scholarship money. And I was able to kind of eliminate Syracuse from the beginning, because I was like, do I really want to be in Syracuse, New York? I mean, obviously I've heard it's cool over there, but I feel like I wanted to be at a school that was like closer to the city. because I've grown up in a very small town. Obviously, like Philly is pretty close access, and I never really went into the city, so I just kind of wanted to have a different experience of being at a school that had easy access to the city and all that. So yeah. Also, again, the money, Syracuse didn't offer me as much money, so I had to kind of toss them to the side. But yeah, then it was left with Temple and BU, and it definitely initially was going to be a tough decision because Temple being very close to home, I feel like that would have been obviously very convenient, but at the same time, for whatever reason, I really don't know what it was, because I never visited Boston University, but for some reason I was just like, I could really see myself going to BU. Like I remember looking on Google, looking at the campus, and I was like, hey man, I could see myself walking around here. They got some nice little greenery or whatever. Although after going there and everything, obviously the greenery it's not as prominent as I initially anticipated. But yeah, BU is very expensive, and so also I think I forget like in which order I applied, but I feel like BU was like one of the last schools to get back to me about a decision, and it was getting pretty close to like the decision day. And so for a period of time, I thought I was going to be going to Tyler School of Art at Temple. And then I seriously started considering like whether I would even go that route, and if maybe I should just go into freelance, because like I said, I really like the idea of paying like thousands and thousands of dollars in student loan debt was just not something I was interested in, starting life post grad already like in a hole. So I was seriously considering like maybe like if it doesn't work out with the scholarship with like BU, and Temple doesn't give me more money, like I'll really just maybe see what it looks like going straight into freelance design. But yeah, I remember the day vividly when I got accepted into BU. It was funny because I was actually like on the phone, I was calling BU financial aid because I think it appeared that there was like an issue with my application. So I was very worried that would affect my ability to get a scholarship and everything, or even be accepted. But then I was like on the call, like on the hold line, calling them, the financial aid office, and then I got the email notification like from Boston University, like, oh, you've been accepted. I was like, oh. So then I went to like the BU portal, and then I saw I was accepted, and then I clicked into it, and then I saw that the acceptance came with a very big scholarship, and I was like, wow, thank you God, because I literally was stressing that what am I gonna do, like, because find it like it's no joke. Student loans are no joke, which I can't say from experience because obviously I was blessed enough to not have to deal with that. But yeah, I ended up leaving high school on a strong note, and my final mark that I left was the high school yearbook. I was very, very much involved in the process of its creation, from designing the cover to photographing a ton of the events and designing a ton of the spreads in it as well. And I actually ended up getting like a special shout out in like the forward in the yearbook, which was really cool. To me, I was one of the only people that got like a specific shout out in the forward. So very grateful to all the people that I had worked with on the yearbook club, because being part of yearbook is no joke. And then another really cool thing about the yearbook is that for the superlatives, I ended up winning the next Picasso along with Adwaita Patil. I don't know what she's up to nowadays, but she was a really good artist as well. Had some incredible drawings, but yeah, that was pretty cool as well to get that acknowledgement from my peers as someone they saw as being a very formidable artist. But one thing I always like to say is that I'm not the next Picasso, I'm the next Psosi, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, that brings me to my experience at Boston University. I had several experiences during school that contributed to my graphic design journey, starting right from freshman year. As design students, we had to take a set of foundation classes before moving on to like the actual graphic design classes and using our computers and all that. So we had to take foundation drawing, painting, sculpture, printmaking, and art history. I think coming in, in terms of like thinking about the foundation courses, I feel like I thought like, man, what's the point of like going back to like the basics, like drawing? Like I already know how to draw. I already like have an idea of how to paint, and I'm like, how is this going to translate to me being a graphic designer? But I am so glad that they made us do these foundation courses, because I realized that breaking down and unlearning the approaches that I had prior to taking those classes really allowed me to become a stronger artist. For instance, freshman year drawing, we had a lot of live drawing sessions where we'd be drawing a live model, and they're hitting different poses or whatever. And what that really forced us to do, for the drawing sessions, there'd be kind of like, they'd be broken down into different kind of time segments. There'd be one session where it's like, okay, you have maybe like 20 minutes to sketch this pose, but then there might be other sections where it's like, okay, you have 5 minutes, or you have like 1 minute to try and sketch this this pose. And so what that forces you to do is basically, you're not seeing the body as like, this is the arm, this is the face, this is the leg. You begin to see the body as like different shapes. And so I think as a result, you're drawing exactly what you see rather than what you think you see. I don't know if that really made sense, but it's like when you're drawing like a figure, you have like an idea, like, at least like from my perspective, it's like, okay, I've drawn like a person before. I know what a person's head shape looks like, what their arm looks like, a general sense of the dimensions. But it's like when you draw it the way where you're thinking of it as shapes and forms, it doesn't allow you to make stuff up. Like, you can't be like, oh, okay, like this is an idea of what I have, this person's arm shape looks like. I have to be like, this is what this specific model's arm shape looks like, and let me draw it like exactly that way. Seeing it as shapes allows you to really speed up your process and identify proportions like way easier. So I guess the main thing to take from like all that I just said, because it was a lot, is just that drawing, this method of drawing, seeing objects and people as shapes, allows you to draw more efficiently, and to also have your proportions more accurate, I would say. Another super important thing that I learned from my foundations courses was from painting, and that is understanding values between colors, like values and saturation, I would say, because I feel like before then, I didn't really have a strong grasp of like colors. And even still now, I can't say that I have the strongest grasp, but it's definitely like way better now than it was before I, took that initial painting class. And so basically, one of the things that was emphasized in the painting class is how colors change depending on what color they are next to. And it's a pretty like simple like concept, but it's something I didn't really realize, like, oh, why is this like green look lighter when it's next to this like dark blue? It's because like the green, in terms of like its I don't know if I guess value, I don't know if I'm using the correct term there, but in terms of like its value, it's like it has a lighter like color value than this navy, which is why it looks lighter next to the navy. But then if you place it next to like this light pink, the green looks darker than it was. And it's like, but it's the same shade of green, but it appears differently when placed next to different colors. And I think that's something that is very important to understand, especially in graphic design, working with colors, different color palettes. And I think that is something that really helped me improve my selection of colors when I'm making color palettes, especially for, my illustrated portraits and, things of that nature. And I wish I could say that I really learned something from sculpture. And this is not to say that sculpture, like the class didn't like teach you, but at the time that I had sculpture was during COVID. And so when we had to like go home, and kind of, and do classes from home, and not have access to the, wood shop and, other materials for sculpture, it made it really hard to actually like, learn some of the different concepts that, our professor wanted us to get from the class. But one thing I will say that I at least learned, or I don't know if I really learned from sculpture, but at least I grew an appreciation for people that create and operate in the 3D space, because it is certainly, at least for me, quite difficult to think about translating things that are 2D into a 3D object, and considering all planes, all the different planes and how they interact with each other. So hopefully that's something I can eventually kind of learn and be better at, but as of now, definitely not one of my strong suits. But yeah, outside of class, I very early on got involved, in really trying to continue my path in graphic design. And so right off the bat, freshman year, fall semester, I saw that there was an opening for a internship with BU Athletics as a graphic designer. So I hopped on that immediately, and this would be my first opportunity to really do graphic design for a sports organization. And that was something I saw myself doing, in the future. So I think it was important to try and get that experience early on to see what it was really like to be a part of that, to be a part of a team, and all that goes into it. And so I'm very thankful to my boss at that time, Wande, for accepting me into the position and really helping me grow as a designer through the internship. I still remember the interview and everything. I pulled up with my laptop and showed off my little portfolio of graphics. I've definitely improved on my sports graphics since this time, but I remember being very nervous at the interview and everything, but Wande was super cool. She made me feel comfortable and everything. And I think as much as an internship is kind of viewed as an entry-level job, it really is a lot about actually learning and really soaking up as much as you can about the industry that you're trying to explore. And so with the sports design industry, especially relating to social media graphics for teams, it's very heavily Photoshop based, but I was coming much more from an Illustrator background. And so to be honest, I was not really very good in Photoshop. And I remember one of the concepts that I really struggled to understand for whatever reason, that is literally so essential to any Photoshop thing at all, is masking. Anyone that is familiar with Adobe and knows what masking is, they're probably going to be well, how did you not understand what masking is? And obviously because it's so important. But yeah, at the time I really didn't understand what masking. I was I just don't understand how this works. How, yeah, I just didn't understand how it worked, to be honest. But then I remember Wande took me through one lesson very early on about making graphics, and she was showing me the masking. And then when she explained it, I just remember everything just cleared out for me, and I was wow, that's all it is. That's all it is. And so yeah, even something as little as simple as that, the masking, knowing how to mask properly, obviously a key part of using Photoshop, being able to grasp that concept and then being able to apply it to any number of design projects that she had me do. And outside of being taught new skills in Photoshop and just getting a greater handle on the technical side of things of working in sports, I think the other major component was just having that experience of being in the office, because graphic design is something you can do remotely, work from anywhere. And so I lived my dorm freshman year was literally right around the corner from the BU Athletics office, so it was a 2-minute walk from my room to the office every morning, which was nice. So it was great to just kind of be in that office environment, see what it's like to be amongst other members of the same team, trying to produce high quality graphics that will draw people into the program. And so I definitely want to give a shout out to Nafisa, who was the assistant director of marketing. She always showed love as well, in the office, made me feel very comfortable and welcome in that space, which I think is, always important. Something that's always important to consider with, whatever work you're doing, the environment that you're in, the people you're around, because that can really make or break your experience, or even, your willingness to do work if you're in a toxic environment or anything like that. But the BU Athletics office, at least while I was there, it was all good vibes, good energy. And it was great up until COVID kind of took me out of that out of that spot. But the next internship that I ended up doing my freshman year, I ended up doing it simultaneously with BU Athletics, was with BU Hillel, which is the primary Jewish organization on BU campus. And so for them, I was primarily just making flyers and graphics for social media. And I feel the biggest thing that I learned from working with Hillel was really understanding how to operate within a brand guideline, but also figuring out how to be like kind of as creative as possible within strict brand guidelines. Because I mean, BU Athletics, like, obviously they had brand guidelines as well, but they definitely weren't as like, they were definitely more flexible. For BU Hillel, like the main, purpose or primary purpose of all of the work that I was doing with them, doing for them, was to communicate about, events coming up, or like basic information about initiatives that Hillel was running. So because of that, like the typography and like hierarchy of text and things like that was at the forefront of the designs. And then so, having that as the base, I had to kind of figure out like, okay, like how can I make this like a little bit more interesting, in terms of including illustration and things like that, because we really weren't allowed to like manipulate the text. And then another thing that I kind of got out of the experience working with Hello, which I ended up working for Hello up until my through my junior year. So senior year was like the only year that I didn't work with them. So yeah, I was doing these two internships, the BU Athletics and BU Hello, my freshman year, going into the summer. And so as we all know, summer 2020 was when we were kind of in the heat of the pandemic. And so, being stuck at home and everything, I was kind of looking to add some more work into the mix. And so I ended up seeing that there was an opening at Harvard football for a design intern. And so the way that I found out is that there was a upperclassman in graphic design, Morgan. So shout out to Morgan. She actually was like my orientation leader. So I think either in 2019 or 2018, she had an internship with Harvard football. And so I think she had posted on her story like, hey, if anyone's interested in, this position, they're looking to hire an intern. And then so I reached out to her and I was like, hey, yeah, I would 100% be interested if you could, get me in contact with whoever, is kind of leading that process. And then so, yeah, she got me in contact with Coach John. Ended up doing an interview with him, and went well and everything. And then he was like, yeah, I mean, we got this position here for you if you want to take it. And of course, I mean, like, BU does not have a football team. They don't have a football program, period. So being football being my favorite sport, I was very much inclined to accept the position. And yeah, so I ended up having this internship with Harvard football summer of 2020, so the summer before sophomore year. And so that brings me to lesson 7, which is shoot your shot at your network, or simply don't be shy to reach out to anyone in your network, because you never know what any conversation or opportunity could lead to. So I ended up doing that internship with Harvard football over a couple of months in the summer. I mainly was just designing like recruitment graphics. I really improved in my Photoshop abilities during that whole internship. And then I ended up taking on another job. At the time that I was, I had the Harvard internship, I was still doing stuff for BU Hello. But then at that time I stopped the internship for BU Athletics. So I had 3 things, 3 jobs rather than, having 4. Cause I mean, having 4 is kind of over the top, even for, during a time where I was at home and, we weren't COVID and weren't able to go out and everything. But yeah, the other job that I ended up adding that summer was being a campus manager with Fresh Prince, which is a custom apparel company. And so basically what the campus manager does is manage apparel or merch orders for different clubs and organizations on campus. And I think now, as someone that is literally running my own clothing brand with a friend, like, so much of the stuff that I learned from being a campus manager for Fresh Prince is directly translated to what I'm doing now, which obviously, they're, both positions are in the fashion and apparel industry. So there's that aspect of things. I definitely got to enrich my knowledge on, things relating specifically to apparel, like different printing types, different garment types, all that good stuff. But I think the more important things were, getting at an idea of how to run a business, and kind of like the structure and all that goes into it, from figuring out the design, the garment type, the pricing, placing, the actual, the order for the client, And so through that back and forth communication with the client, obviously growing in communication skills through reaching out, trying to find clients, networking skills, getting sales skills from obviously actually like closing the orders and, figuring out, how to actually get from that point of, getting someone interested to them wanting to place an order with you. And then there's a little bit of marketing involved as well, having to pitch different ideas to clients, get them on board, even learning how to like market yourself to someone, because obviously like the people I was working with while I was a campus manager they could order merch from anywhere or from anyone. So how do I pitch myself or and Fresh Prince in a way that makes them want to work with me and the company I represent. So I think those were some of the major things I learned. And then I think maybe one of the most crucial things was how to build that client relationships and maintain it, because that is so directly applicable to entrepreneurship. It's the thing that's going to be able to help you grow and grow, is building that trust with clients and keeping them on board as you scale and build up. But yeah, that was the summer of 2020, having that internship experience with Harvard football, continuing with BU Hello, and then starting out my journey with Fresh Prince. And going into that sophomore fall, I was back on campus amidst the whole COVID and everything. That was definitely an interesting time because we kind of have, it was like a hybrid schedule where sometimes we were in class, but it was like very reduced numbers, everyone sitting like every other seat. And then there would be like another, a bunch of classes where you were just doing the class from in the dorm room and everything. But yeah, sophomore year of classes and everything was when we actually got into using our laptops during class and everything, and actually starting learning about the fundamentals of design after completing all those foundation courses freshman year. My classes included graphic design studio and typography, along with like some other general education classes, and then graphic design history. I really enjoyed all of my design courses. All my professors were really amazing, especially during that COVID time, man. They were so understanding and forgiving. Honestly, I feel like as a student, sometimes you kind of took a little bit advantage of that. But yeah, they were not only, did they give great critiques, great information, great guidance. They were just really there, I feel like, there for us as students. But yeah, in general, that sophomore fall, everything went very smoothly in terms of classes and everything. I didn't get COVID during that semester, at least, so that was good. But then yeah, going I would say that winter break, that winter of 2020 going into the spring of 2021 was when my design career, I feel like, kind of started taking off a little bit. And so that is because I finally started posting on TikTok. And for anyone that was on TikTok during that time, you would know that TikTok in general wasn't taken very seriously as an app. It was still very much so a dancing app where people would just post kind of silly, goofy videos on there. But man, I'm seeing people who are artists like making work and are like getting a crazy amount of exposure. I was like, why don't I start also like sharing my work on TikTok? I mean, like if these people are doing it, like why can't I? So that was kind of like my mindset. I think I've started posting my first initial videos, maybe I want to say maybe like October, November, leading up into winter break. And so that was kind of laying the foundation for me getting into TikTok. Like I'd had my account, I think, since senior year of high school, but I definitely like wasn't posting on it or anything. So yeah, starting out, I was posting, I think, like portraits of music artists. I think I did I remember doing like a ASAP Rocky illustration of Lil Uzi Vert, and I remember getting like I think 6,000 views, and I was like, yo, let's go, like 6,000 people saw my post, like this is crazy. And so that just encouraged me to like take it more seriously and keep posting on there. And then I was thinking to myself, okay, like what's next? Like I've made these illustrations, like they've done well, what kind of projects can I get into next that'll help me really grow and scale on this platform. So I thought to myself, like, wouldn't it be cool if I illustrated like one player from each NFL team and did that as like a series? So like I ended up calling it like my NFL 32 for 32 series, or actually I think I said that a little bit out of order. I think what prompted me to end up doing that series is there was a different artwork that was NFL related, but it wasn't actually part of the NFL series. But basically around Christmas time, I had made a illustration of Saints running back Alvin Kamara in the style of Kid Cudi's Man on the Moon 2 album, which had just been released. And so yeah, that post ended up I think getting like 40k views, which to me at the time I was like no way 40k people like are viewing my artwork. I didn't even know like it was possible for me to be able to get that kind of reach. And so because that did so well, I think that's actually what had prompted me to do the NFL 32 for 32 series. But yeah, I think that just encouraged me more so and gave me more confidence, like, okay, like what I'm like the work that I'm making has, you know, some sort of value. People are interested in it, because I think one of the things that it hindered me from posting in social media in general and you know, on TikTok as well, was just that like I always thought like, I mean, there's like 50 other artists that probably like make the same type of work as me. Like, what's the point of putting my own work out there? But I ended up finding out that, you know, everyone has their own flavor, you know. And so yeah, I decided to go all in on the NFL 32 for 32 series. So yeah, the first player I ended up doing was Travis Kelce, followed by Justin Jefferson. The Justin Jefferson one ended up doing numbers. So that, I'm telling you, that really just like boosted my confidence. And I was like, all right, I got to keep this going. You know, there's people that are like really interested in the work that I'm creating. And I'm telling you, I would like, it was kind of like, to me at the time, it was crazy. Like the amount of comments I was getting, like people would be like, yo, you should do this person next. You should do that person next. And then, you know, it got to the point where I got like the social media accounts of, you know, professional teams were commenting on my stuff. You know, I think Pittsburgh Steelers were one of the first teams to comment. So I ended up doing like a Juju illustration. And then I even had teams from other leagues commenting, like the Detroit Pistons commented on one of my posts. I actually never ended up doing something for them. Maybe I still have the comment saved though, so maybe I'll respond to it like 4 years too late. And then I even had like AS Roma, the soccer team, the football club, respond to me. They have like, I just checked now, they have like 14 million followers on TikTok. Like they're a big you know, football club. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I never experienced like that much like attention and you know, surrounding around my artwork and myself. And like I said, I was just so encouraged by all the comments I was receiving for people wanting me to, you know, make this thing or make that thing. And then there were people saying like, yo, you're like the greatest like NFL artist I see, in like comments like that, man. And then even people saying like, oh, you know, I'm kind of like inspired them to make their own type of artwork. I think that's, you know, what really brought me a lot of joy. And it's funny that my biggest moment from this whole TikTok phase actually wasn't from my NFL artwork. It was from an illustration I made of an NBA player, Ja Morant. And so I remember I had made the illustration and everything, and in my like head I'm like, yeah, this is fire. Like this is one of like the best things I've made thus far. It was just a cool illustration, like, you know, all the textures going on in the background and all that. And then so I think it was like a Tuesday night or something. I remember posting on TikTok at around like 7 p.m. And then, you know, I went out about my evening and everything. And then I checked my phone again like 11 p.m. And I'm like, whoa, like my phone has been blowing up like the past couple hours. And then I go on TikTok and I see like, oh shoot, the Memphis Grizzlies like TikTok, like my video. They commented, and then they also followed me. And I was like, what the heck? Like the Memphis Grizzlies follow me on TikTok. And at the time I had probably like 6k followers on TikTok. And so I was just like, what the heck? Like that's really cool. And they still follow me to this day. So shout out to whoever the social media manager was at the time that hit me with the follow. But yeah, from that TikTok alone of the Ja Morant illustration, I ended up gaining, I think, like 6K followers on TikTok. So I think that brought me up to like around 10K followers on TikTok. And then on Instagram, I think by then, I think I was like over 1K. And then from that post, I think I got like a couple other hundred. So maybe I was probably at like 1,500 or something like that. I don't remember the exact times and what my following was and all that on Instagram, but I just remember that being like a very big moment in terms of growth on social media. And one of the coolest parts about my illustration going viral was that it was like the #1 trending video under the graphic design hashtag. And at first I thought like maybe I was only seeing it on like my end or on my phone because like I was the one that posted it. But then I had someone that had like, they texted me and they're like, yo, your video is like the #1 trending under graphic design. I was like, yo, that's crazy. So that was definitely a really cool special moment that I always kind of look back on and will always encourage me, you know, like I mentioned earlier in the video, like, you know, being careful about where you're placing your value, you know, especially that can be, you know, dangerous territory with social media when you place your value in getting this recognition and things like that from, you know, from people and from, you know, these big accounts. But I can't lie and act like, you know, the recognition I was getting isn't what really helped fuel my confidence and motivation, aside from, you know, being confident that, you know, God had given me these creative abilities and, you know, has positioned me in a place where I can, you know, really grow and expand with it. But yeah, that brings me to lesson number 8, which is success is the culmination of hours and hours of repetition and practice. It's never really as instant as social media makes it seem, because like for me, right, I had been drawing little NFL, you know, players since I was 10 years old. Obviously, no one's going to see any of the hours and hours I spent drawing those players and growing in my, you know, skills and abilities over the years up until the moment where I started actually getting that recognition on social media. You know, no one's gonna know unless I like explicitly showed them, like, you know, I actually have been drawing and doing all this for years and years, and now I'm finally able to be on a platform where I can broadcast that to, you know, all kinds of people. You know, no one's gonna see that. And so I think, you know, as we all are on our journeys trying to pursue excellence in whatever it is that we are gifted at, just remember when you see, you know, other people succeeding in those areas, you know, don't feel jealous or anything. Just know your time is coming. And as long as you're, you know, you put in that time and effort in preparation, when that moment comes, when you're ready to take that stage, you know, you should see a successful result. Now, besides growing a following on social media during this period, this is when I decided to brand myself as the people's designer. And the reason that I chose to brand myself in this way is because I felt that all the work that I was making was in response to people and to the benefit of people, really. I was bringing people like joy and excitement through the work I was making, you know, and I was always engaging in the comments with people. And anytime I like posted, like specifically for like the NFL series, like anytime I posted like an illustration, it was always in response to someone's comment. So I felt like I was really involving the community that was supporting me as I was growing. And so that's why I felt like, you know, the people's designer felt appropriate. And then I guess some more like background on why I chose the people's designer is my initial like thought process was thinking about like the people's champ, which is someone that's kind of like, you know, everyone supports, everyone's kind of like fond of, they're very like down to earth. And, you know, in general, people want to see them win because of the fact that they are, the way that they posture themselves towards people is very welcoming and all that. And so I felt that very much reflected me as someone that's like always been down to earth. I'm very approachable. Like, you know, I and in general, like this is something I feel like I never really quite understood, which I guess maybe it's just God's favor. It's just, I just felt like people would just like gravitate towards me, and I'd always wonder like, why? Like, what am I doing like that would allow people to want to, you know, be cool with me or support me or anything like that? Like, especially in like going into my junior year, I would say like, yeah, that sophomore spring when I was like really starting to be on the ascent on like TikTok, and then going into the fall of junior year, when I think back to it, I'm like, my heart is just like so like full, because I really couldn't understand like the amount of love and support that I was receiving from people, especially like on campus, man. Like people would always be talking about like, oh, yo, I saw like your new like artwork. No, it looks great. People would just be constantly like reposting my stuff without me even saying anything. Like it was something else for me, at least. Like I didn't think, I was like, what did I do? Like literally, like I just said, like, what did I do to deserve all this love and support from people? Like people were telling me that they're at their family dinner telling their parents about how, oh yeah, they got a homie that makes artwork that the NFL, like NFL teams are like reposting and stuff like that. Like for me to be like the mentioned in someone's like family dinner discussion, I'm like, wow, that's really special. Which brings me to lesson 9, which is show support and find a support system. So if you're on the giving end, showing support to those around you that, are doing, even if they're not doing amazing things yet, if you see the potential for them to do amazing things, make sure you're encouraging them, keeping them going. Because, a lot of what kept me going was, I had people in my corner that was just constantly encouraging me, saying like, yo, like you're gonna be big, bro. Like, all this stuff, it might seem like it's just words, but that stuff really does help keep you motivated, especially when it's like the best intentions and interests are at heart from the people that are giving that message. And then finding a support system, if you're the person that is having the potential to really do something in whatever field you're in, just finding a couple of people that you can always kind of like bounce ideas off of, that will be there to help guide, support you. Because one thing that I'll never forget, this quote is, mankind is no island, it's not a solo act. And going back to choosing to brand myself at all, as the people's designer, I think that really gave me direction and purpose for my design career. And then that brings me to lesson 10, which is to establish goals and then make decisions that align with helping you reach that goal. Like, okay, if I'm gonna call myself the people's designer, I have to identify what it actually means to be a designer for the people, or for the people, as I like to say, and then pursue that. So I kind of gave myself like a framework for what I want to operate in. Like if my final goal is to live out my identity, which is to be the people's designer for the people, like, does my design practice actually reflect that? And it's okay if where you're currently at doesn't reflect your goal, but then it gives you, like I said, it gives you direction. So I'm like, okay, what do I have to do to then head towards the direction of being the people's designer, or really fulfilling that identity and role? And so one of the things that I at least started, which I haven't quite gotten to yet, is my For the People initiative, which I'm not going to dive too much into in this video because it really deserves its own separate video. But yeah, I just want to give you guys a general sense of the where and why of the People's Designer and For the People, and where that initial idea came from. And to kind of close off this chapter of my little social media run in 2020, 2021, I want to kind of recap some of my other highlights after, the whole Ja Morant illustration that went viral. And that would include, several players reposting and commenting. Yeah, it was really cool, for me to see my work being displayed on, the highest level, these teams and with these athletes that I've always kind of admired. And soon enough, I believe I will be partnering directly with some of them. And although I'm never going to actualize my dream of being in the NFL through being a player, I can certainly do it through utilizing my creative abilities. And I definitely see that as a success. And actually, one of my biggest successes that came out of growing my audience on social media was when I got to design a billboard for UPenn. And so basically the way that it happened was a marketing company who had seen my work on TikTok reached out to me and they wanted to partner with me, or basically contract me to work on an illustration for Penn Medicine as part of an initiative that Penn was doing to basically work with local artists in the Philadelphia area to create artwork that basically said thank you to all the healthcare workers that were putting, their lives on the line every day to, continue to help and serve and protect us throughout, that period where the pandemic was still lingering on. And so the idea that I had was to take an iconic sports play, the Philly special during the Super Bowl. So I took that as like the inspiration for the design, and then from there I illustrated a version of that featuring healthcare workers playing a game of flag football, featuring like a crowd of a diverse cast of community members basically cheering them on and saying like, way to go, like thank you. And so the marketing company really, loved the work that I came out with, and so did UPenn as well. And then I even ended up making like a, kind of like a promotional TikTok video about it, explaining, what I was thinking with the design and my design process and everything. And it was shared on UPenn socials and all that. And in addition to, my work being shared digitally, it was super cool to also see that the work was displayed physically. It was displayed in the UPenn Smillo Research Center. And then my artwork was also displayed on a physical billboard at the UPenn train station in Philly. So I got to go with my family to see it in person, which was pretty cool. Because like obviously, you got trains coming in and out, and all kinds of people are getting to see my artwork, which was, something I really appreciated. And so, yeah, that was definitely my biggest freelance project at that time. And that all came as a result of me putting myself out there on TikTok and, getting that exposure to where, I had that marketing company reach out to me to be a part of this project. So, I mean, that kind of just shows the tangible results of getting that exposure and not just kind of getting it for the sake of clout or whatever. And so that was spring 2022. And then I would say my next biggest project was finishing my personal website in the fall of 2022. And so that was first semester senior year and everything. And I had been wanting to finish my website for like I think I initially started it probably sophomore year, and then I never finished it. But I was like, if I don't finish designing this website like this semester, it's not gonna get designed in like a proper in like a timely manner. And then obviously, senior year and everything, and thinking about like job applications and all that, I wanted to make sure that I already had my website and everything set, for that season. And so, yeah, I put a lot of time and effort into designing the website, making sure that, it was aesthetically pleasing, also matched my vibe, and, really showcased my broad range of work. I also ended up creating some merch as part of my website launch. And so I'm rocking the Psosi hoodie right now, and a big thank you to anyone that actually has purchased Psosi merch, since I launched the site. Because I mean, like I said before, I always think like, who am I that people would want to actually buy my merch and wear it out and show support. Like I like speechless. It really warms my heart to receive that support. And then I'd like to give a shout out as well to my boy Aaron Siriamonthep. He is the photographer that did my People's Designer photo shoot. And if you follow me on any socials, I'm sure you've seen this photo before. This photo was actually Aaron's idea, and I think it perfectly captures, or is a perfect representation of what it means to be the people's designer. As you can see, while I'm taking this punch from my friend Keshin, so a big shout out to Keshin as well for being part of this idea. But yeah, as you can see, as I'm taking this punch, I'm unfazed. I'm standing 10 toes down, standing on business. And so I feel like that goes to represent how, as the people's designer, I'm willing to stand in there for people. Honestly, it's just a really cool picture in general. It's my LinkedIn profile picture, and I have it pinned on my Instagram profile. So I really big fan of this picture. And I think one thing that I kind of got from the photo shoot as well is that maybe I can model a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Maybe you guys will see some more Psosi shoots where I'm in front of the camera in the future. But yeah, before going into talking about my senior year, I cannot do that without mentioning my junior year design cohort. And by that I mean like the people that were in my design class junior year. And I would say junior spring specifically. Like junior fall was good too, but junior spring honestly was something else. Like the environment and energy that we created as a class from like day in and day out was completely unmatched, and it really set the tone for us going into senior year. But yeah, honestly, I'm not really sure exactly what it was that like clicked for us, but maybe it was because it was like really the first year that we had as a design cohort outside of kind of like the restrictions of the pandemic. But yeah, I mean, we just got like really close as a class, like really almost like a family. Like we all felt super comfortable around each other. Everyone felt free to like really be themselves and felt seen, I feel like, in the class. And I would say up until that year and really that semester specifically, I wasn't like super close with people in my design class as much. I feel like, obviously I'd be cool with them in class, but like outside of class, I didn't really like, hang out with them as much. But that semester, like I remember just like, getting, becoming, a lot more friendly with everyone and wanting to spend time with them, even outside of like the studio. But then obviously a big part of the whole experience was that we would always be in the studio together and, grinding stuff out. And I would say me personally, I had a really interesting experience in that class because for whatever reason, I ended up being or like becoming like the class mascot, or I don't know if mascot is the correct word, but or maybe the class representative, I don't know, but like I just found myself being featured in a lot of different ways for the class. Like we had like a class Instagram and they had like multiple posts of me with these like fake inspirational I mean the quotes were like real, but they were quotes that I didn't even say, but they would be like, yo, like quote Psosi, like stop doubting yourself was like the major one. And then for like one of the projects that we had that year or that semester, one of the groups decided to put like my face on the in vinyl. When they presented it, they had like a whole like black curtain reveal, and I like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, who am I, bro? Like, you want to talk about like feeling loved, man? Like, obviously I feel mad love from my parents, my family, friends, but I'm telling you, the love that I felt from my classmates, from campus in general, like I was saying again, man, it's not I don't take it for granted because it's not everyone that gets to feel that love and support. And like my face literally stayed on the wall for the remainder of the school year up until summer. Like obviously like for the next class, like they gotta remove it because imagine being the next class and then you just come in and you're like, bro, what, like why is this dude's face on the wall? But yeah, that brings me to senior year, and man, it's crazy to think that it's already almost been a year since I graduated. But yeah, senior year, I would say I kind of took a step back in terms of how intense I was with graphic design. I shifted my priorities to making sure I actually graduate, take care of all my final degree requirements and general education credits and all that good stuff. And then I would say what really actually became my main priority was just enjoying and spending time with the amazing people and community that I got to, be a part of at BU, from the people in my design cohort. And I got to give a special shout out to the family tree. And then, all the people that I was able to, become friends with all the way from freshman through senior year. And so, I wanted to prioritize just, enjoying life and, making memories and spending time, with people, because I felt like, and I feel like I felt comfortable doing that senior year because I had already laid like the groundwork and foundation all the previous years, all the hard work I had put, into growing my online presence. But even then, I still decided to take on another internship my fall of senior year. And it was honestly, it was mainly because I needed some internship credit for my minor in arts leadership, or with a concentration in entrepreneurship. And so I was actually able to run it back with Harvard football. And so when I had my Harvard football internship the first time, it was during COVID. So I was back home doing everything completely remote. But, during my senior year, when I had the internship, I, was able to commute to Harvard campus, which is not too far from BU. So I didn't have to go like in all the time, but I would go in like at least, I think it was only like once a week. That was really, another great experience of seeing what it's like to, work in an office environment. But yeah, in general, I feel like, I was able to continue to grow my Photoshop and Illustrator skills in this position with making graphics. And then I would say the best project that I ended up doing with my experience at Harvard football was this mock Harvard football rebrand. So that was a cool, kind of a cool project to finish out my experience with them. And now looking at my classes, my senior year in graphic design, in the fall, they were a lot more collaborative. Our first project was Impact and Empathy, where basically we explored a social issue and had to design our project and several deliverables around that issue. And so my group, we ended up landing on the issue of data privacy, with like the initial interest being in cookies on web browsers. I'm sure you've gone, on the internet and seen like, the website will be like, do you want to accept these cookies? And it's like, obviously for the most part, you just click accept. You're like, okay, who wants to reject cookies, right? But, we were just kind of thinking like, wait, like, what are these cookies that we're accepting actually? And, kind of diving into that. And something that was really cool that we got to do as part of our project is we actually made fortune cookies. So, I mean, think about that. Like in a graphic design class, we got to make fortune cookies as part of our project. Like where else, does that kind of get to happen? But yeah, it was interesting for sure. Had a lot of burnt fingertips in the process of making the cookies. But yeah, basically, the cookies were relating to the idea of like magic cookies and how they capture your information. Some of the other deliverables that we made was a large cookbook that was really like an informational kind of publication about the ins and outs of data privacy, data mining, all that stuff. And then we also had a very interesting little kind of like surveillance video that we had taken of the class to kind of represent how you're always being watched, when you're on the internet. But yeah, that was a really cool project to open the year with. And then for the next project, it was sight and sound, which, very much as the name implies, the project was based off of creating visuals that responded to sound. This project was definitely challenging because, for one, in terms of the visuals, we could only use typography, so we couldn't use any images. And then the other challenge was that everything was made using the risograph, which I'm not going to dive into this video because that's a whole process. But the results, I would say, were quite cool though, getting to combine the analog prints of the Riso with animation and also like the print deliverables as well that were made out of it. And then our last project for the fall semester was Thoughts on Thesis, which was going to be leading into the thesis project, which is the only project that we did for the for the spring of senior year in the final semester. And so for Thoughts on Thesis, I already had a strong idea of what my thesis was going to be because, like I had mentioned earlier, I had already defined, branded myself as the people's designer. And then I had this question that came to mind of, what does it actually look like to be the people's designer or to, be a designer for the people? Another thing that really influenced me pursuing this topic was a design theory class that I was taking that same senior fall with Yael, who was a professor that I had sophomore year as well. We had a lot of great conversations in that class, especially thinking about the why behind design and, the purpose behind, certain projects, and really reshaping how we think about design, as contemporary designers. And another thing I actually just want to say about Yael very quickly is that I'm very thankful that she pushed me to kind of expand my creative interests out of the world of sports, because in the beginning of my sophomore year, outside of doing sports artwork for my personal work, I also was creating sports content for my design classes, and she had just kind of nudged me and was kind of like, hey, you're a very strong designer. And I think one of the things she had said was that I have, kind of a knack for being able to tell stories with my designs. And so she was just kind of like, what would it look like if maybe we applied that outside of the world of football and sports? I think I found that I was drawn to creating around ideas relating to culture and I would say social issues as well, which then plays into my senior thesis and exploration of what it means like to be a designer for the people. And so I made the connection between being the people's designer and addressing social issues and seeing how design can be, sort of a facilitator in that space, not necessarily like, I'm like coming in as like the hero and saving and solving anything, because that's kind of naive to think that way. But seeing how design can play a role in, facilitating tangible change, I think was what I kind of, my eye was kind of open to, and kind of the direction I saw the people's designer going in eventually. And so fast forward to senior thesis in the spring of 2023, I ended up focusing on what it means to be the people's designer through service, collaboration, and storytelling, with the underlying topic of addressing social issues that were presently affecting my community, which was the BU community at that time. So I focus on just my peers at BU. And so in order to do that, I actually had sent out a survey to literally, I think it was close to 700 people via Instagram DM. I ended up getting around 350 responses back. And so that gave me a very large pool of answers, and I think a wide representation of, what issues people were kind of seeing as being needed to be talked about more or not being addressed enough in, mainstream media. And then I made a 700 plus page book with, all those responses, along with articles relating to the topics. And then also if people gave any solutions to those problems, I included them in the book as well. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna make a full video on my senior thesis project eventually, because it relates to the whole idea of for the people, which was the title of my project. Also on my hat, if you want to get one for yourself from the Psosi from the Psosi.com store. But to invest so much time into one project was something I'd never really done before. There was so much research and thought that went into creating the final deliverables for my project, which were that 700 page book, another I think 150 200 page book along with the senior thesis book. And then I also created merch that was specific to the project, and also did a collaborative photo project. So I did a lot of different things for this senior thesis as a whole. And I think I just learned a lot about what it takes to really be a designer for the people, and the labor that goes into it, and how to be really intentional with design. And I think that's something I'm definitely going to explore more in the future. And senior thesis went very, very well. We had an awesome show and everything. And then came graduation. Graduated with my BFA in graphic design, like I said earlier, and a minor in arts leadership, and with a concentration in entrepreneurship. And so post-grad, I kind of took a little bit of a pause, I feel like, and just kind of wanted to breathe and be present. It wasn't easy, getting everything done, graduating and all that. I feel like sometimes, you take it for granted that you were able to accomplish something like that, like graduating, but it's not everyone that, makes it all the way through and graduates. So thankful, one to God for, allowing me to, have the opportunity to go to Boston University, and for his, continued grace and favor towards me. Obviously, thankful to my family for always supporting me and encouraging me, and to my friends as well who have done the same. And yeah, so last summer after graduating, I didn't have any, job lined up. And so I just kind of went into, trying to do some freelance work, at least to make some money while I was kind of, looking for jobs. And so I was fortunate enough to have one of my professors from senior year, Professor Grady, he reached out to me about working on a project. And so that was pretty cool to be able to work with my professor post-grad. Definitely check out his company, Design Axle. They do a lot of UI, UX design. And, he's definitely worked on a lot of cool projects. But outside of working on that freelance project, and then, a few kind of like smaller things here and there, I really wasn't doing a whole lot of work. And then in terms of the job search, I was still mainly looking only at jobs in sports design, whether with like professional teams or collegiate programs. And I probably ended up sending out about 30 applications or so, but that was including like both design and photography positions. And then I ended up hearing back from one NBA team, which was pretty cool, I can't lie, because for one thing too, it also showed me that, hey, people are actually seeing these applications, because it can be a little discouraging when you put all this time into, you're writing your cover letters, you're doing, you're submitting these applications and you don't get any response, or you just get a straight up rejection. It can kind of feel like, oh man, like when am I gonna, get an opportunity to even just like get my foot in the door. So, it was cool to get that opportunity. And it was honestly, the circumstances of getting an opportunity to interview was kind of crazy, because like the day that I got notification that they had shown interest in wanting to have me interview for the position, I was on like the way to Ghana. I'd gone to Ghana with my sister, and we had landed in Cote d'Ivoire, which is right next door. And so I think we were in like the middle of like transition, like waiting to transition to, flying to Ghana. And then like while we were in the airport, I'm pretty sure is when I like saw the notification that, they wanted me to do the, complete the interview and everything. And so luckily, like the interview was like online. It was like a remote interview, and it was like pre-recorded as well, so I didn't have to worry about like time difference or anything like that. But I did only have a couple of days to complete it, so just having that whole like situation of me just arriving in Ghana and then having to record this interview and all that, I can't say that my head was exactly in the best space to to do all that. And then additionally though, I just feel like this obviously I'd had like interviews before for like my previous internships, but this one, I don't know, I was just particularly nervous for this one. I remember just like the first question they literally just asked was like, tell me about yourself, which is like a standard like interview question. And I remember I like kind of like prepared for it a little bit, but when they asked me on like the online thing, I just froze. And I was like, my name is Perry. And then I like couldn't think of anything else to say. So yeah, I did not end up advancing in the interview stages for that position, but I'm still thankful that I was able to even get that interview and kind of just get a feel for what the interview process would be like. And I think if I ever have like another interview, I'll definitely be more prepared. I'll be more well prepared. But honestly, I would say for the summer I wasn't too so that was in like July last year, and I would say like I wasn't too concerned about finding a job at that time, at least. Like I honestly just kind of wanted to take it chill. Like while I was in Ghana, that was like one of the first times I like didn't really like, that was like one of the first times in like a while I had taken like a real vacation from like doing any type of work, because like being a designer, it's like you can always have work to do just because of the nature of the work, right? You can do anything remote. There are people always looking for to have something made. So at that time, I was kind of honestly just taking like a little bit of a pause from design. I wasn't really posting like that much on social media, doing like personal work or anything like that. And then so yeah, I enjoyed my couple of weeks in Ghana and just really being present and getting to spend time with family, and just getting to kind of meet and connect with with new people, feel more established and connected there. And then so yeah, when I was coming back to the US, I think it was like August 12th or 13th, I just remember feeling like, okay, I've had my my little period of enjoyment, relaxing. Now that I go back home, like I'm like summer's almost over. Like what am I gonna do? Like where I can't just be sitting around waiting for stuff to happen. I gotta try and figure out, like, am I do I keep applying for jobs, or do I just try and go like go harder and go all in on this freelance stuff? And then crazy enough, a couple days after I landed back home in the US on August 15th, I got I was checking my email and I got a message from some guy named Jake. And I'm like, okay, let me check this out. And I think the header was just like, I think basically just said like some sort of like partnership opportunity. And then so in the email, he basically said like, yo, what's up? I'm Jake. I just graduated. He had only graduated like a year ahead of me. So like, we're the same age. And then he mentioned that he was looking to partner with a designer to start like a brand that basically collaborates with athletes, entertainers, influencers, and performers to make merch for them. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy, because that literally aligns perfectly with my interests in wanting to combine. I'd always wanted to work at the intersection of sports design and pop culture. I mean, that's kind of what I was already doing in terms of like my personal work, but taking that to the professional level and being able to monetize that was really what I was seeking. And so I, after reading his message, I was like, okay, I'm down to, I'm definitely interested, I'm down to hop on a call and, kind of like talk things out more. And then so I forget if we talked on the phone like the next day or maybe like in a couple of days, but yeah, after talking to him on the phone and everything, I was like, man, I can tell this guy's got a good head on his shoulders, he's definitely, I could just like sense that, because you can tell like usually right away when you're talking to someone if you're gonna vibe with them or be able to like work well with them. And obviously if you're doing a partnership, like it would be kind of foolish to try and work with someone that you're not gonna vibe well with, because that's gonna cause a lot of issues. But yeah, after talking to him, I was like, I can definitely see us working together and everything. And then so he lives in Jersey, which is another thing too, which was like, wow, like he literally also lives like relatively close to to me. So I think maybe like the following week or so we ended up meeting up in person, like halfway in between where we live, and then started hashing out the plans and ideas for our brand, which is HomeCrowd Threads. And so to me it's crazy that like it all kind of happened off of like a kind of like a random reach out, which goes back to like my earlier lesson, right? Don't be afraid to reach out to your network, even though at the time I guess I wasn't really in this network, but he had randomly stumbled upon my, I think, page on TikTok or something like that. But then I guess that even ties into the whole idea of trying to put yourself out there. But yeah, I mean, I think my whole thought process was, why wait for these companies or these organizations to give me an opportunity to pursue what I've been interested in doing since I was a kid, which is to, like I said, work and partner with these professional athletes and teams. Why not create that opportunity for myself or for ourselves, working with Jake, because that was also something that was definitely a goal of his. And so our visions both aligned and our partnership works really well. I mean, I get to focus on doing my designs and illustrations, which is something I was already doing, and I just get to apply that to the business that we're running. And then he gets to be more on the marketing side of things, and we combine together to our entrepreneurial minds to see how we can really grow and scale this business. So we had our soft launch back in November, just kind of throwing our name out there, getting trying to get some eyes on our brand and everything. And then when we were in the process of building up the brand and everything, we didn't want to rush anything from the beginning, even with figuring out like who are we gonna print through, doing a couple of like test prints, things like that, and then figuring out like our strategy for building out, our social media platforms and all that, and doing a ton of reaching out to people, and hoping that someone would just give us a chance to work with them and partner with them. And then so in January was when we launched our first partnership. I mean, that was pretty cool to get to connect with a professional quarterback right from the jump. So slowly but surely I've been able to start building these relationships and collaborating with these athletes. And so we're looking to continue building these relationships and maintaining them. And I'd be lying if I said that I haven't like doubted myself a million times throughout this short period that it's been building up. And I think that kind of goes back to the whole instant gratification thing that you kind of, especially with social media, you kind of get a false sense of that. Some of the the brands that we see today that are really dominating the marketplace, that they kind of just like were able to land there after a couple months of work. Like, no, like the biggest brands that are around today didn't just like up and start and they were the next big thing. Like it took, like I mentioned earlier, it takes there's a lot of preparation that goes into being ready for that stage where you can really elevate and have success. There's a podcast I listen to called Podcast P, hosted by Paul George, who is an NBA player for the Los Angeles Clippers. And so in one of the episodes, he had talked about how when he was a rookie in his rookie season, he basically proclaimed to his locker room that in 2 to 3 years, he would be an all-star. And they all kind of like laughed at him, or like, what are you talking about? Like, you've literally been getting cooked in practice by our own guys. Like, what makes you think you're going to be an all-star? And lo and behold, I mean, now Paul George had several all-stars under his belt and is regarded as one of the best players in the league. So I think having that mindset of, just give us a couple years and check in then and see where we're at. And I'm sure it's going to be even beyond our wildest expectations. And that brings me to the final lesson, which is slow motion is better than no motion, which is also one of my life mottos. And, basically it just means that it's better to start and, kind of build up something slowly and consistently rather than not start at all because of fear of failure or because you're afraid of not having instant success. I mean, I certainly don't have everything figured out yet, but I'm on that journey right now and I'm excited to bring you guys with me. With that being said, I want to wrap things up and highlight the lessons that I've learned on my graphic design journey so far. Lesson 1, encouragement catalyzes interest. Lesson 2, repetition builds the habit of excellence. Lesson 3, identify inspiration, remix it, and make it your own. Lesson 4, take initiative and show up. Lesson 5, be careful where you place your self-value. Lesson 6, do your research and stay educated. Lesson 7, don't be shy, reach out to your network. Lesson 8, success is the culmination of hours and hours of repetition and practice. Lesson 9, show support and find a support system. Lesson 10, establish your goals and make decisions that are in alignment with reaching those goals. Lesson 11, slow motion is greater than no motion. And a bonus lesson, lesson 12, is to take breaks and make sure to enjoy life and the process, because one thing that I've learned is that I can be a workaholic at times. Like I mentioned during college, I mean, there was a period of time where I had like 3 or 4 different kind of like jobs at the same time, along with being a student. You're not going to get to your destination if you're burnt out and if you're out of gas. So take it easy, enjoy the people around you, and keep progressing consistently, and you'll get to where you are trying to be. But yeah, that's it. Let me know in the comments if there are any lessons that resonated with you. And if there are any lessons or insights you gained from my story as well, please feel free to share those. And I just want to say thank you so much for the continued love and support. I hope you got something valuable from this video. And until next time, much love. Ate sway.